If you've ever had a child lose a game and thought, why is this such a big deal to them? You're in the right place. Because when kids lose, it's rarely just about the game. It's about fairness. It's about control. It's about belonging. And a nervous system that just doesn't know how to handle these big emotions, often in public moments. In this episode, we're breaking down what's going on inside a child's brain and body when losing turns into melting down, quitting, or blaming, and why trying to teach them a lesson in those moments usually just makes things worse. We'll talk about why sore losing isn't a character flaw, and how responding in ways that build regulation and resilience over time without shaming and lowering expectations actually makes kids into really good losers. If that sounds good to you, let's get into it. Welcome back out to the porch. I have so many stories that I could tell you about my kids being bad at losing, but I actually want to tell you a story about me being bad at losing, because the John who is whole parent John, the John who is pastor John, occasionally I will mention about being at my church where I am a pastor, is not the John that always existed. This John is a more mature, more well-regulated, sometimes, most of the time, version of me. But when I was growing up, I was super, super competitive, and I hated losing. And I'll give you an example of one of these moments that really sticks in my mind. I was the coach. This may sound strange. I was the coach of my church's church rec league softball, co-ed 16-inch softball league back in the day, or team in the church league back in the day. And my wife used to play with me. We were high school sweethearts. And so she was on the team too. She did not originally go to my church, but once we started dating, I had to recruit her in because you had to have 4 girls on a team, and she's pretty athletic. She was really good. So it was nice to have her on the team. My cousin, also a female, was pretty good. And so having a couple of really good girls who could play well was a huge advantage. Now, 16-inch softball, for those who might be listening and not aware, is a unique game in Chicago. We are like the only ones who play it, I think, basically in the world. But it's softball without mitts, so there's no gloves. In our league, the girls could wear gloves because they tended to have smaller hands, but the men could not wear gloves. So there's no mitts, and you're playing with this big ball, which at the beginning is not really soft at all. It feels like a baseball in the first couple innings, but then eventually it softens up, and it's pretty heavy. And so it's kind of this unique game, but it's kind of the definition of not super competitive, what I'm describing to you. So a lot of the people, like, there were games where we had, in order to be able to field a team, you had to have a minimum of 4 girls. Like I said, my mom, who's like the most unathletic, like never played softball, she would get out there if we needed to, otherwise we would forfeit a game. And so this is not a highly competitive environment, but I took it so seriously. Like, so seriously that it would like make or break my whole day or week if we lost a game or if I didn't play well, which is kind of crazy because there were absolutely no stakes, but it just was a big deal. And I could be, I was notorious for like arguing with volunteer umpires over a call that they missed. Of course they missed it. They were a volunteer. Like, they didn't know what they were doing, but I used to just get so heated. And I remember this one specific moment when I knew that I had a real problem. And it was because we had recruited the chaplain supervisor. She was a woman who went to our church, the chaplain supervisor, to come with her son, who was like maybe in high school, to come and play because we needed, again, probably an extra girl for that day. And I was like so mad about something. And she said to her son, essentially like, don't worry, we never have to come back. And we were like winning the game. And I thought it was going pretty well. Like, I think we were probably winning by a few runs. Our team was pretty good. And she said to this like 15-year-old kid, like, don't worry, we never have to be here again. I know it's like really stressful and intense the way that that they're doing this. And she was talking about me, and I like really ruined it for somebody else. And I'm not going to say that moment fixed me or anything like that, but it was one of the experiences that led me to realize that I had a real problem with things that felt unfair. And I had a real problem with losing. And losing felt very threatening to me. And I needed to work on that. And I have worked on that. I don't play rec league, 16-inch softball. The league disbanded. Maybe if I played today, I would be just as aggressive. I highly doubt that I would be. 4 kids has very, very much softened me. The last year that we played, my wife was pregnant with my first. And so, yeah, it's been a long time, but I remember that. I remember that vividly. This mom saying to her son, "It's okay. The people on your team have made this unfun by being too intense, by essentially being sore losers before they even lost the game." And so I'm excited to do this episode because this is something that I need help with. And I don't want to pass that on to my own kids. And so I usually give an example from my own life of my kids doing stuff, but this is an example of like, this is a lesson that I struggle to learn. And you know who was the one arguing with the umps right alongside me? My dad. He was also on the team, and he also was the one screaming at everybody and being way too intense for the circumstances, probably chasing people away that didn't say in front of me, "We're never coming back because of these fogels who may take everything too seriously." And so I'm trying to do better by my kids. I don't want to raise 3 more fogel boys who don't know how to lose and don't know how to take a chill pill and don't know how to just make things fun. And so we're talking about it today. I have 3 questions from people, and I want to get into the first one right now. So the first question comes from Maddie DM, Maddy. I like to spell this out. Some people say Manny. No, Maddie. And she says, "Hey, John. So my 4-year-old is really bad at losing, kind of like me, but instead of 4, I was 20. Like full-on meltdown. Board gets flipped. It's not fair. Over and over, etc. He'll quit halfway through and storm off and then come back crying because he never gets to win." This is in quotes, which is not true. "I'm trying to teach him that losing is part of life, but honestly, sometimes I want to just be like, dude, it's Candyland. Is this just a phase, or am I raising that kid who can't handle not being the best at things because it feels embarrassing in front of other parents? And also, I don't want him to grow up thinking the world owes him wins." Great question, Maddie. I have an almost identical experience playing Candyland with my kids when my oldest, when he was 5, stopping in the middle. "This isn't fair. I don't want to play anymore." And I will start by saying it is kind of a phase. It's a phase as it relates to Candyland, but it may not be a phase as it relates to losing, because as I just expressed, if we don't do a good job with framing games around what they really are, we can raise kids who are kind of these testosterone heavy, especially in my experience, especially boys, but it definitely could be girls as well. These testosterone heavy, like just really rough around the edges losers. And the reason why a toddler experiences this is actually the exact same reason why I was experiencing this at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. And it's because we have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to no longer live in caves and small tribes and villages out in, the uninhabited wildlands where we were constantly under threat. Are we going to have enough food? Are we going to be able to survive the winter? Are we going to come into a conflict with another tribe, even another species, right? There was a time in which Homo sapiens were not the only humanoid species. But what about another species like a saber-toothed tiger? I mean, I'm being kind of facetious here, but, big predators that are out there in the wild. And our threat response was evolved to keep us alive in an environment where the overwhelming majority of people died before they were 30 years old. And so understanding that our threat sensor as a 4-year-old is designed to keep us alive when the tiger comes running at us, or when the bear comes running at us, or when we think that we're out of food, or when we think that we're separated from our parents, which is the only way that we're going to get food and warmth and comfort. That threat response is still buried deeply in our brains and our evolutionary biology. The difference is those things are no longer true for by and large, right? Occasionally there are threats that appear, but most often our brain is actually participating in something called amygdala hijack, which is when we feel like something is a threat to our survival, even though it's not. And in the case of a 4-year-old, it's probably just that this is a big emotion. There's adrenaline that comes from playing games, that comes from luck-based games, right? You turn it over, you don't know what it's going to be. If it's that thing that you like, you get a little hit of dopamine. Yeah, that's great. You get a little hit of serotonin. I'm winning. That feels good, right? A little hit of testosterone. Like there's emotional chemicals in your brain that are running around as they're playing the game, which is why kids like to play games. They like to get all those good chemicals coming in. The problem is we also have loss aversion, and we also have those kind of cortisol chemicals, the stress chemicals that come in when you flip over that card and it's not what you're expecting. I remember one time when I was playing Candyland with my son, we were at the library. This is a cheat code, by the way. We didn't keep Candyland in the house because it got too crazy. So we just went to the library to play Candyland. And we went to the library to play Candyland. I set up the board and him and I are playing. And he was doing really, really well. Like he was almost close to the end. We had not even been playing for that long, but he had drawn a couple of the candy cards where you get to skip ahead for those who are familiar with the game Candyland. But there's always a chance that either the opponent, could draw another candy card that put me even further ahead of him, or that he could draw a candy card that sent him back. Now, some parents have told me since, you know what, we never go backwards in Candyland. That's just, but you know what, that's not, as far as I know, that's not the rule. The rule of the game is that you're supposed to go onto the square, that when you draw a lollipop or a popsicle or something, you're supposed to go to that square. I'm not here to argue over the house rules of Candyland or not. But when he, in the course of this game, he drew the card and he had to go way back to the beginning and he just stormed off. And it's funny because he didn't even lose the game, right? Like he was not even much further behind me, but he was much further than where he was. He still easily could have won the game with a couple of good draws. I think he went back to about the same place that I was. But because he was close to the end and he had this expectation of winning, then all of a sudden the cortisol kicks in and he's like, I don't want to do this. This is unfair. This is, you're cheating. Which of course, all of those things are not, kids want to call things unfair when they don't go according to their expectations. And that's really what all of this is about. When we talk about losing with kids, what we're talking about is there is an expectation for them that they are going to win. And that is because the way that they futurecast is not logically. They futurecast emotionally. They want to win. And so their underdeveloped prefrontal cortex essentially just fills in the gaps. Okay, then you will win. You want this, then you'll get it. And it's really easy for then that not to happen because of the natural course of a board game like Candyland. And what will happen is that then that feels like a threat to them because what they predicted would happen, which is that they were going to win, again, not logically, but emotionally, they predicted they were going to win, is no longer happening. And their brain goes into amygdala hijack, where if you can't predict what's going to happen next, or if your predictions are not coming true, that feels threatening to our nervous system. So then they are kind of get into a spiral where they start to panic about the fact that they're not winning. And they just start saying, it's not fair. I never get to win. And again, a lot of this is just age and developmental in phase. What we really want to work on is not placing value in winning as the ultimate goal. But that's not even what they're worried about at 4, right? I'm not even really concerned about that at 4. Really at 4, all you're taking in is, okay, this feels threatening to them. This is the fairness perception is that they aren't getting, my son never complained about it not being fair when he was winning, by double the distance to the end. He cares about it not being fair when all of a sudden something doesn't go according to his expectations. And so fairness is not things are equal. Fairness are things are going the way that I want them to go, or things are going the way that I expected them to go, which often are the same thing in the mind of an underdeveloped mind of a child. So what I would kind of hold here, I would hold the boundary around losing because kids do need to learn how to lose, but I would not try and teach a lesson in this moment and make this like a character building opportunity. This is an example or an opportunity for frustration tolerance and emotional distress tolerance, not an opportunity for like empathy and teamwork and all of these skills that require perspective taking, which your child just probably is not at yet. And that's where a lot of parents fall short. They're like, well, if you don't like to, if you're not willing to lose, then nobody's going to want to play with you. Well, a child does not have the perspective taking ability. Like if they're able to say, good game, good job, let's play next time, that is a trained behavior, but it doesn't come from deep understanding of like, next time we're going to play, I'm going to, I can potentially win. Like it literally is just a trained sentence that they spit out because they feel that they must, because again, their parents have conditioned them into it. So I would go in, I would hold that boundary and I'd say, I can't, I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to fix the game so that you always win. Losing feels really big in your body right now. Let's take some dragon breaths, or let's play an emotional regulation game. And then you tell me what felt unfair, right? So just reconnect, just focus on the connection. Because often what kids are experiencing when they're losing is this experience of disconnection from their body and disconnection from their opponent. Like this is another piece. I know that there are times to play games with kids. Like I said, I played games, but I don't play Candyland with my almost 4-year-old now. Like I've learned over time that like there is just no reason to put myself and put him through that. If we're going to play a game, we're going to play a game that's in some way cooperative. Maybe I reframe the rules. I'll play Candyland, but I'll reframe the rules of Candyland where like we're not racing each other. We're just both trying to make it there. And can we both make it there before the timer's up or something? And then we're collaborating against the board. I think that those work a lot better for kids. So don't fix the game. Don't like cave and give in and just kind of do whatever they feel like doing because they don't understand it. Instead, just reframe and say, okay, yeah, the game doesn't feel fair right now. I hear you. Don't lecture them about how it actually is fair. Just say, the game doesn't feel fair right now. I hear you. We can't change the rules of the game. Let's co-regulate in a number of ways. Again, go to the bottom of the show notes and get your copy of my top 5 emotional regulation games. Use any of those emotional regulation games. By the way, the 5 emotional regulation games are changing. So by the time that you listen to the episode, it will be updated with a new 5 emotional regulation games that you get. My top 5, I've matched the branding. My wife beautifully illustrated a brand new complete emotional regulation game guide that's available for purchase. And it's based on the illustrations that she did for our children's book that's coming out at the end of April. And so we updated the branding and we updated the art, and actually we updated the games in our top 5 to more clearly reflect the top 5 that we really use the most, instead of just like, oh, here are 5. These are really our top 5. So you can go down to the bottom, you can get those games and play one of those games when the Candyland game doesn't go well. And so that's kind of my script here. You don't have to bail out, but then also think, I would just be more preemptive, and I would think a little bit more about like, do I really want to play winning and losing games with my 4-year-old, or do I want to wait until they're 5 or 6 and they have an ability to do some perspective taking and logical thinking before I do that? I see so many people, like even in my family, playing Candyland over and over with like 3-year-olds and 2.5-year-olds. I'm just like, why are we doing this to ourselves and others? It just feels like you don't have to do that. There will be plenty of time for that later. You don't have to like push your kid into that early. Okay. Let me take a quick break, and then I will come back with a comment from TikTok from Josh. Hey, I want to pause for a moment and talk directly to you, because if you've been listening for a while, you know that I don't have any sponsors on this show. I have done very few ads. I take the ones that I get. But the truth is, this podcast actually costs me money to produce. It takes time. It takes me getting childcare. It takes equipment. And it's something that I do genuinely because I believe in helping parents feel less alone and more supported. It's like social media videos that I make. I don't make money off of those. I don't make money off of my email list. And so if this podcast or any of those other things has helped you have that moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm not failing. My kid's not broken. I can actually do this, and have that confidence to parent consistently with brain-based techniques or evidence-based strategies, I want to gently ask you to consider supporting the show on Substack. It's completely voluntary. There's no paywall. There's no real exclusive content that you're missing out on. It's just a way to go in and make the podcast sustainable. Think of it like tossing a few dollars in a hat for work that matters to you, for conversations that you want to keep alive in the world. If you're the type of person who puts $1 or $2 in a tip jar of a barista that you really like, if you're the type of person who throws $5 in the case of somebody busking that's playing music in the subway, this is that. Except you're doing it online on Substack for a podcast that I try and put out basically 5 days a week, which is a huge undertaking. Every single one of you who chooses to contribute actually makes it possible for me to keep doing this work week after week, episode after episode. So if that's something you want to do, the link is in the show notes. Again, it's on Substack. And truly, I want to thank you just for giving me the time and attention to even consider this. It is the reason that I am able to keep doing this. All of the money that goes in to the podcast basically just gets put back into producing the podcast. I do this because I love it and I want to get back to doing that. And so that's the end of my little pitch. Please, please, please consider it. I love doing this work. I love making these episodes, and I want to get back to doing that right now. All right, this is on a old video that I had. It's a TikTok comment. And the video was about sore losers, like how to play games, cooperative games. And Josh said, my daughter is 6 and she's fine playing games if she wins, but if she loses, she shuts down. Like totally, won't talk, won't keep playing, won't look at anyone. It feels kind of weird as a reaction. Any thoughts? Yes, I do have thoughts actually. And I'm going to go back to what I talked about towards the beginning of the episode with my example of being overly competitive in a only mildly competitive church softball league. The work that I've done internally through journaling, and I did do therapy for a long time. I don't do regular talk therapy right now. It's a season where I haven't felt like my therapist and I felt like that we didn't have to meet monthly right now. Things are I have the tools and I'm using the tools. But through those tools and through a lot of deep introspection and self-reflection, I realized that a lot of my feelings that I had to win came from a feeling that if I won, people would like me. If I was a winner, if I was successful, if I was a champion, that somehow that would change how people viewed me. And when I read this comment that my daughter won't talk, won't keep playing, won't even look at anyone, one of the first things that pops out to me is how losing to some people, especially highly sensitive kids, and again, if you don't know this, 20% of people, according to the work of psychologist Elaine Aron, I think you might have a PhD too, 20% of people across all cultures and times have been more sensory, have had a more sensitive sensory and emotional internal world. And these people she identifies as highly sensitive persons. Highly sensitive persons, according to her work and research, really struggle to get things wrong and really struggle to lose because they feel that their achievement and performance and ability to be seen as like a person who doesn't make mistakes is central to their identity. And she goes into lots of reasons why this is. I'll have to do a whole episode on that another time. I've already done actually an episode on highly sensitive kids that you can go back to listen to. It's one of the earliest episodes. I don't know which number it is. But like in the first 30 or episodes or something, there's an episode on highly sensitive kids. It's one of my most listened to actually. But when I hear about a 6-year-old who won't even look at somebody after she loses, it does feel like a weird reaction because she's experiencing some shame, some social anxiety over losing. And when I experienced that, my response was to double down, to try harder, to like really focus on winning. And it was because in some way, I really felt like whether I won or lost defined me as a person. And even when I recorded the intro, I usually don't fix myself in the intro. I just kind of read it. And if I make mistakes, so be it. But I had to re-record the intro because I said something that like slipped out that kind of betrayed this. I said like being a good loser. And then I said, if you can even be a good loser, if that's such a thing. Of course it's a thing. But I am still processing that and losing that part of myself because, you know, for some people, they just feel like that's really centrally important that they win and that they're an achiever in that way. And so with a kid like this, I think you take a 2-pronged approach. The first aspect of this is before you ever play the game, you set expectations that sometimes new things are hard. And sometimes we win. These are 2 affirmations, mantras that I use with my kids and myself. 1, new things are hard. New things are always hard by their nature. If they weren't hard, they wouldn't be new. Nobody is naturally gifted, so naturally gifted at anything. If they are, it's just because that thing is drawing on something else that they've done. And so it doesn't feel new. If it was truly felt new, if it was new, in other words, they wouldn't be good at it. It would be hard. And so new things are hard always because we have to build new neural pathways. And sometimes you can kind of intellectualize this for kids and it helps them to say, yeah, you know, your brain has to learn how to do this thing. Did you know that your brain has to change and it actually has to grow to learn how to do these things? And sometimes kids really appreciate that. And really smart, intellectually stimulated kids, they look at that. My son, who's 9, he loves that, right? He used to hate when I said new things are hard until I explained to him what I meant by that. Like there are literal pathways in your brain that have to be built. And it feels unconscious to you to catch a baseball now, but it was so hard for you at first when you didn't have those neural pathways in place. And he's like, oh yeah, that's true. That's so true. And so you can do that. New things are hard. And you can also say, sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. That's another one that I love. Right? And you set these expectations ahead of time. These are not the mantras that you use after the fact when a kid is experiencing this kind of performance-based shame or this social anxiety around losing or just avoidant behavior after a loss. I don't think that that's the time to do it. These are the things that you can do in the off periods between games, even after a win, right? Yeah, you did win. Also, you could have lost, right? Like sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. I think that those are the times to do that. The second pronged attack on this one is after the loss happens, I wouldn't talk about winning and losing at all. I'm not saying I would avoid it, right? I would not like just be dismissive and be like, oh, let's just never talk about this again. I would just say your job is to reconnect, to play another game, to read some books, to draw with her, to play with some of her favorite toys with her, to reconnect in whatever way works for her so that it becomes very, very clear that her belonging does not disappear just because she loses, and her belonging would not be better. She would not have a better place in your family if she was more winning. And I want to say here, you're identifying this at 6, and I think that this is really important. But when I see this more in society is with like 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, when they have severe anxiety around winning at school. And not winning in terms that we think about it, right? Like the game, a game of school, but like getting good grades is a form of winning in school. And when kids don't do that, they feel like they don't have a sense of belonging. They feel like they have to perform for their food and their place in their family. And many of us grew up in families where we had to perform to belong. We had to be a certain way. Otherwise, frankly, affection was held back and punishment was laid on and all of that stuff. That is a real reality. And I don't think if you're listening to this podcast, if you listen to my podcast on a regular basis, that's the type of house that you want to live in. I don't think that you want to live in a society, in a family where your kid thinks that your love is conditional for them. And yet, so much of our way of parenting older kids feels transactional and conditional. And so I think it's a great opportunity, Josh, at 6 years old, when your daughter loses at like we were saying, Candyland, or a soccer game, or, some competition that they're in. Don't withhold and not put her in anything, right? Like, this is different than a 4-year-old. A 4-year-old who's struggling to lose at a game where it's 1v1 in a board game, I think that there's some place for us to go, they're not ready for this yet. Let's wait a year. But a 6-year-old who's maybe about to be 7, she probably is 7 now because his comment's pretty old. Like, I don't think that you at this point go, yeah, I'm not going to give you those good stress environments. Those are good stress environments, but the difference between good stress and toxic stress often, and tolerable stress, is a supportive home environment, a supportive home base. And what you want is for her sense of belonging and love to never be tied to winning. And so I would not talk about winning and losing at all after she loses. I would go, I'm so happy that I get to hang out with you now. I'm glad that game's over. I'm so happy that I get to hang out with you now. Let's go do this fun thing that we love to do together. I don't want to. I just lost. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not even thinking about the game. I just love spending time with you and I just want to hang out with you. Like, that's what I would be. That's what I would be focused on. I don't know if that's helpful to you, Josh, but I think we're parenting with the long term in mind. We're starting with the end in mind. And I think that's where I would want to start. Thinking about how we want her to be and how we want her to perceive her value, not as being tied to being a winner like I did, but being tied to being loved, which is what I try and do now and what I'm trying to do for my kids. Okay, take another break and then we'll get into Annie. Question number 3 is the longest question today. Comes from Annie. It was an email. Often they are the longest. She says, my 7-year-old is in soccer now, and every single game they're losing, he just spirals. He starts blaming his teammates. He yells at the ref. Sometimes he cries or refuses to play at all. The coach pulled me aside last week and was like, he just really wants to win, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. It doesn't seem like it's coming from the coach. He's super laid back about winning and losing. It's just my son having the issue. We tried talks in the car, taking breaks from sports altogether, even bringing him with us for ice cream if he keeps it together, which I know was bad, but I was desperate. Is this emotional immaturity? Is it too much pressure? Is this testosterone? He's 7. I feel like I'm watching him become someone who I don't want him to be, and I don't know when to step in without making it worse. Annie, thank you for this question. This is very normal, 7-year-olds colliding with their own competition and understanding and their loss of control and autonomy and coming into themselves. And so I don't want you to feel like this is the end of the world. I think that in many ways, everything that, like, you don't have to worry about this if you do what we've been saying so far. And I'm going to give you some practical tips of how to work with a kid who's specifically a little bit older, 7, as they're doing this. But I want to begin by saying, don't listen to the shark music. For those who have not heard me talk about shark music in the past, I try and talk about it a lot. It's one of my favorite parenting concepts. It comes from Circle of Security. And shark music is this idea that in the movie Jaws, when the shark is coming, you always hear this dun-dun, dun-dun. And when you hear that, you know that the shark is somewhere. And oftentimes the kind of the beauty of the movie Jaws, Spielberg's one of Spielberg's early movies. One of the beauties of the movie Jaws is that they didn't really have the technology to make the shark look very good. And so they used the music, John Williams music, and like very simple props, like some barrels that they drag around in the water to make you deeply uncomfortable, underwater camera shots that make you feel like you're looking at the perspective of the shark, making people feel vulnerable. And they really leverage this music to great effect to make you feel every time that the music comes that something bad is going to happen and that death is on the horizon. There's blood in the water. The problem is in parenting, we often do that. We see something that is pretty typical. I coached soccer for 7-year-olds and I had a kid like this on our team. In fact, my son kind of was like this, but not as much as some of the other kids. So there's one kid in particular who I'm thinking about who has really struggled with losing. And we see that and we go, oh my gosh, this kid is going to be one day, if they keep on this path, one day they're going to be, come on, John, screaming at people on a 16-inch softball field. No, or they're going to be really aggressive. Like, at least I was just yelling at people in the context of the game and I wasn't acting out aggression in other ways. But I don't want you to hear the shark music, because oftentimes it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We start to treat our kids in a certain way because we're worried that they are going to become a certain way. And then actually they hear that message, I'm becoming this way. And then they lean into it. This is the same reason I can't get into it. I have a lot of things about this self-fulfilling prophecy in parenting, but whatever we're worried about with our kids, like you are becoming this bad thing. Like they hear that, even if we're not saying it, they see it in the way that we interact with them and engage with them. And that becomes like their narrative. And you just don't want to get to that point. So it's normal. Hear that first. It's normal. It's their nervous system colliding with all of these things at 7, their sense of autonomy, their sense of agency. They really have a sense of agency, but like all of a sudden they're interacting with other people. Some 7-year-olds, like there's a broad spectrum of athletic ability early in childhood. And then it starts to kind of, there are different phases where it kind of equals out. And then it kind of, by high school, it kind of separates and there's kids who are really athletic and people who are less athletic. But at 7, it's a collision of where some kids were really, really athletic at 4 and 5, and they were like faster than all of their friends, and they were like more coordinated. And then at 7, their friends catch up with them or get close enough to them where it's not like easy anymore, right? 5-year-old soccer is just like 2 kids are really good, and they're kind of running circles around everybody. By 7, 8, like there is a level of like, everybody's coordinated enough that there can be some stops, and it can become frustrating for other kids who it was easy before and now it's not. And so I kind of all of this swirling together, it's just a difficult time to be in doing this athletic endeavors. And what you have to think of it as, I want to reframe it instead of like, my child really cares about winning. I just want to say your child really cares, right? Ultimately, he really cares, and he doesn't have the brain development yet to perspective take. He probably has some perspective taking, but not enough to see how that caring affects other people. Like I didn't have that ability at 17 years old. I was still developing that. How does this affect other people? This is something that he's going to develop for the next 20 years of his life, at least 18 years of his life. He's going to be figuring out how his actions impact others. And so you can consciously draw his attention to that without shaming him, because ultimately he cared too much and it cost some other people some other things. But just like in the previous 2 examples, Josh's daughter and Maddie's son, your son's brain too is being amygdala hijacked. It's going into fight or flight, and he's trying to figure out how to like make sense of this panic mode when they're losing. He tries to regain control by taking over the game. He tries to like flee, like this, we can go through them, right? Fight, flight, or freeze, right? Freeze is just like, I'm done playing. I'm not playing anymore. Flight, he's trying to get distance from the responsibility. He's blaming other people or he's blaming the ref. Fight, he just tries to play as hard as he can to try and win the game in spite of this, or like really, slide tackles an opponent or something. I don't think they let 7-year-olds do that, but you get the point. So you can see him going through this hard time. And that's what's happening. He's having a hard time. He's not giving you a hard time. He's having a hard time. So number one, I would try and stop processing. Same thing is true of Josh. I would stop making it about winning and losing. He's going to make it about winning and losing. I would stop trying to process this in the game. Hey, do this well. I would even stop trying to process it immediately after the fact. You said that if you did well, then we went to ice cream. I would remove that. I would go, okay, we're not going to process this in the heat of the moment. I would process this with a 7-year-old. They have a memory. I'd process it the next day. Or maybe, if the game happened in the morning, you could process it at dinner. And you could say something to the effect of, yesterday was hard. It wasn't hard because you lost. It was hard because losing made you feel out of control. And that's something that we can work on together. Can you tell me more about what that felt like? And that's how I would process that. I would be looking back at this going, okay, so like yesterday, it felt like you were really out of control during the game. Did you feel out of control? No, I just thought that the ref was like messing up at everything. Yeah. So it felt out of your control because the ref was doing that. And I'm kind of modeling this as though I'm leading. I think actually asking the questions generally, like genuinely, and say, tell me what's going on. Like, I want to understand what makes you so frustrated about this so that I can understand how to help you. I think he might be able to give you some language that you can then repurpose and use. And then when do you use that? You use it before the game, not after the game. So as you go in, you're driving on your way to the game. This is where he's probably already thinking, okay, we got to win this game. We got to, I want to score a goal. We got to beat the other team. Shift it into not have fun, but hey, I want to see you grow today. I want to see how you're growing today, and give him a job that has nothing to do with winning or losing. I want to see if you can get 3 really good passes today. Oh man, I want to see if you can smile and wave to me 3 times during the game. I want to see if you can collect 20 high fives. I recently heard a TED talk about this. The guy, I think it was about Steve Nash, who's a famous NBA point guard. And they were trying to figure out why he won the MVP. He was an MVP twice, and both times it's kind of like a suspicious MVP where he didn't have really the stats to do it. It's a sports metaphor. I guess you guys can listen to it in an episode about winning and losing. But somebody went through and were able to record. They looked back at these games, and everybody always says that he was the best teammate to play with. It's oh man, Steve was so good. And oftentimes we think of that as because he was a great teammate because he took care of the ball. He didn't turn the ball over. He was a great passer. But what they found was that he was the best at high-fiving people of anybody in the NBA. He collected more high fives every game than anyone else. And it made people feel different. It made people feel different around him because he made this intentional effort. So tell that story to your kid and go I want to see if you can collect 20 high fives during the game today. And give him goals that look like growth, but they don't look like a win and loss column. Because those are the goals that he can actually control. And my guess is a big piece of this is about control at 7. A big piece is control. And so everything that I've set up to this point, right? If it's about shame, if it's about feeling like he has to win to be accepted, listen to everything that I just said to Josh about his daughter and apply that. That may be a thing. But if it turns out that it's really about control here at its base, then I think that you want to shift this from into some sort of process-minded, progress-oriented things that he can control. And I think if you do that, and it's not about outcome, which he can't control, then you can start to say wow, you did that. You did a really great job. And I'll say, when I was a volleyball coach, this actually did affect really positively outcomes as well. So I stopped caring about wins and losses in my tenure. I inherited this team that was terrible. They couldn't win anything. They literally had not won a game all season. And I turned the team around and had us winning within like 2 weeks of me starting as their coach. And I take massive amounts of pride in that. Not because I was like the world's greatest gift as far as a volleyball mind, but because I totally reframed it from like, if we're not going to win any games anyway, like let's play for different points. Let's see if we can go the entire game without doing this bad thing, or let's go like, and then just focusing on the progress, right? These were like 14-year-old girls. Like they were not going to join the professional or like get scholarships to college the next year. They were not going to join some sort of professional overseas volleyball league in the next 6 months. They didn't matter. Like volleyball didn't matter. What mattered was how they experienced the game and how they were going to improve. And I gave them those jobs and it was amazing. It did actually impact performance in a really amazing way. And they started winning games, partially because I didn't really care if we won or lost points if they did the right thing. Right? Like if they did the right thing and the outcome didn't come, that's fine. I don't care. Like I care about the progress, right? Like you did the right, like you guys worked together in this way and that was great. And if they didn't do it right, I didn't come down with punishment. I just came down and we got to work on that next time. Right? So if you're in the back of your mind going, okay, yeah, but I do want him to like, also he wants to be good and I want him to encourage him. Yeah, and this will lead to results too. Steve Nash was the MVP because his team kept winning. Even the other people who were better basketball players than him were on teams that didn't win. So they didn't really care. And they gave him the MVP instead. Again, those MVPs are kind of suspect. One of them probably should have gone to LeBron. But anyway, we've reached the end of our time for this evening. It's kind of a longer episode because I love talking about this. I love talking about how to create good losers and kids who love to play, but don't make everybody else hate to play around them. And so I hope that this has been a good episode for you. Yeah, that's what I got for you. I'll shut up so that we can get to the outro. Bye for now. Thank you for your time listening to the Whole Parent Podcast today. I hope you got something out of it. I have a couple quick favors to ask of you as we end the episode. The first one is to jump over on whatever podcast platform that you are listening to right now and rate this show 5 stars. You'll notice there are a lot of 5-star ratings on this show, whether that's on Spotify or Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. We have a ton of 5-star ratings, and it helps our podcast get out to more people than almost any other parenting podcast out there. And so it's a really quick thing that you can do if you have 15 or 20 seconds. And if you have an additional 30 seconds, I'd love to read a review from you. I read all the reviews that come through. If you particularly like one part of the podcast, or you like when I talk about something or whatever, imagine that you're writing that review directly to me. The second thing that you can do is go and send this episode to somebody in your life who you think could use it. Think about all the parents in your life. Think about your friends, your family members who could use a little bit of help parenting. It's vulnerable to share an episode of a parenting podcast with them. I get it. But imagine how much better your life is as a result of listening to this podcast, of following me on social media, of getting the emails that I send out. You can share that with someone else too. And so I encourage you, just go over, shoot them a quick text, share this episode with them, or share another episode that you feel like is particularly relevant to them. The last thing you can do is go down to the link, show notes at the bottom. And like I said, in the mid-roll, you can subscribe on Substack. It's $5 a month or $50 a year. I don't have that many people doing it. And yet the people who are doing it have made this possible. And so if you like this episode, if you like all of the episodes, if you want them to continue, the only way that I can keep making them is through donor support, free will donations to the podcast. Please, 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 as you're thinking about the end of this year, as you're thinking about your charitable giving, I know I'm not a 501c3. You can't write it off on your taxes, but if you'd like to give me a little gift to just say thank you for what you've done this year, the best way to do that is over on Substack. Again, $5 a month, $50 a year. It's not going to break the bank. It's probably less than you spend on coffee every week. Definitely less than you spend on coffee every week. Maybe less than you spend on almost anything, right? $5 a month is very, very small, but it goes a long way when it's multiplied by all of the different people who listen to the podcast and sending that over to me. I get all of that money. It's just my way of being able to produce the podcast, spend money on equipment, spend money on subscription fees, hosting fees for the podcast, all of that stuff, email server fees, all that. So if you're willing to do that, I would love it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'll see you next time.